In this Java tutorial, we're learning if, else if, and else statements. We'll start off by writing an example of an if, else block, and then we'll talk about logical operators, which are really important to know for writing if statements and also just in general for coding. I've just got an empty Java class open here. Let's type if, a set of parentheses, and a set of braces. Whatever is inside of the parentheses is our condition. If the condition evaluates to true, then whatever is inside of the braces is going to run. So if we have if 9 is less than 10, then whatever is inside of the braces will run if 9 is less than 10. So we can just put system.out.println code in the if is running. If we run this, 9 is less than 10, so it will run. If we change it to if 10 is less than 10, then it won't run because 10 is not less than 10. And there is a lot of different stuff that we can put inside of the condition for our if statement. We can put if 10 is less than 10, we can put if 10 is greater than 10, we can put if 10 is greater than or equal to 10, which will run because 10 is equal to 10. We could put a variable instead of the number 10 that we had before. So we could put if x is less than 10, and then we could make a variable x. Int x equals 15. So 15 is greater than 10, so it will run right now. Now let's make a Boolean variable. A Boolean is just a variable that can only possibly have a value of true or false. Those are the only two options. Let's make a Boolean called isHungry and set it to true. So now if we go if isHungry double equals true, double equals is just comparing for equality, because in Java when you use the single equals, then it's called the assignment operator like we did up here, which just gave isHungry a value of true. So when we're comparing for equality, we use double equals. So if we run this right now, we have if isHungry equals true, then it's going to run. And because isHungry is a Boolean variable and it can only have a value of true or false, we can actually get rid of this double equals true and just put isHungry. So if this was run right now, then isHungry would just be converted to true because it has a value of true. So it would say if true and run the following code and it would run. Let's just get rid of this print statement and let's put eat tacos. So if isHungry eat tacos, and if I hover over eat tacos, it will say create method eat tacos, and it'll just make that for me. And we can just put system.out.println whatever it sounds like when you eat tacos. I'll go scrump nom, something like that. If we run this right now, isHungry is true, so eat tacos is going to run. And let's add a second part to our if statement. Let's put an else statement onto it. So the code inside of the else block will run if the code inside of the if block isn't going to run. So if the condition evaluates to false, if the person isn't hungry, then the code inside of the else block will run. Only one of these will run, they will never both run. I'll put another print statement inside of our if block. I'll just go system.out.println hungry, so going to eat tacos. And then the person eats tacos. And then inside of the else block, let's just put not hungry, but going to eat tacos anyways. Not hungry, going to eat tacos anyways. So if we run this with isHungry being true, then we get hungry, so going to eat tacos. And if we run this with isHungry being false, then we just get not hungry, but going to eat tacos anyways. And let's make another Boolean. Let's say if Boolean is sad equals true. And then in between our if and our else statement, we're going to put something called an else if statement. And the else if statement is only going to be evaluated if the if statement above it is false. So we can put if isHungry and then else if is sad. And inside here, let's just copy and paste the code from inside of our if block, and we'll put sad, so going to eat tacos. Sometimes people will put the else if statement on the same line as the closing brace for the if statement. That's how I usually do it, but a lot of people also find that it looks cleaner if you just put it on the next line. So of course, if you think that looks easier to read, then go ahead and write it like that. So when this is run, if is hungry is going to be evaluated first. And if it's false, then the else if statement will be evaluated. If it's true, then the code execution is just going to jump from eat tacos all the way to past the whole if, else block. So it'll jump right down to here. I'll just throw a print statement in here. We'll go system.out.println past the if/else block. So if the if statement evaluates to true, then the code inside of the if block will run, and then the execution will just jump to our last print statement that says it's past the if, else block. If the if statement evaluates to false, then the else if statement will be evaluated, and the same logic applies here as above. So if the else if statement evaluates to true, then the else block is not going to run. Our else block now is only going to run if both of the conditions above it evaluate to false. So if is hungry and is sad are both false, then the code inside of the else block will run. And I can just change the code inside the else block to be not hungry or sad, but going to eat tacos anyways. So we have three possibilities here. The person is going to be hungry, so they'll eat tacos. They'll be sad, so they'll eat tacos. Or they're not hungry or sad, but they're going to eat tacos anyways. There's also something called logical operators, which we can use inside of our conditions to make them a little bit more fun. Essentially, they can make it so that two conditions get evaluated. So we could go if is hungry and tacos remaining is greater than 0, then eat tacos. And I'll just change our variable x to tacos remaining. So the logical and is just the double ampersand. And it says if both of these conditions are true, then run the code inside of the if block. If either of these is false, then the whole condition is going to evaluate to false. Is hungry will be evaluated first because it's on the left. If is hungry is found to be false, then tacos remaining is greater than 0 won't even be evaluated, because it will already be known that this whole thing is going to evaluate to false because the first condition already evaluated to false. We also have logical or, which is just two pipe signs. The pipe symbol is usually found on your keyboard right above the enter key. Logical or just means if one of these things evaluates to true. So right now if we ran this, then is hungry would evaluate to false, and then tacos remaining is greater than 0 would be evaluated, and it would be found to be true because tacos remaining is 15. So then this whole thing would just be turned to true. And there is a little bit of kind of an order of operations with these. The logical ands will be evaluated before the logical or. I'm just going to copy our is hungry and tacos remaining is greater than 0. And we'll add a logical and onto this. So we'll go and is sad. So if we put this inside of the condition for our if statement, then the question is, would it be evaluated like this with parentheses around the is hungry and tacos remaining, or would it be evaluated like this with parentheses around our tacos remaining and is sad? And the answer is that the logical and operator takes precedence over the logical or operator. So our condition would be grouped together like this, with tacos remaining and is sad being evaluated together. Whenever there is a situation like this, where it's a bit of a question of what would be evaluated first, you're best just to put parentheses around it to make it extra obvious, just so that it's extra easy to read and understand without trying to remember which operator takes precedence over the other. You can also use parentheses to change the grouping of your conditions, which we'll look at in a minute. And another important point to mention is that although tacos remaining and is sad would be grouped together here, they wouldn't actually be evaluated first. Is hungry would still be evaluated before these two were evaluated as a group. So when using logical operators, they're always going to be evaluated from left to right, which can be really important if, for example, your first condition is something like if the length of my list is greater than 10, and say the second condition, which we can put inside of parentheses, is something like if the 10th item has a value of 5, or if the 10th item has a value of 7. And I'll put a logical or inside of here. So we put parentheses in here, so that makes it so that this is one group. If it weren't for the parentheses, then it would actually be evaluated as length of list is greater than 10 and 10th item is 5. with parentheses here and a parentheses at the start. But for our example, that's not what we want, so we'll put it back to what we had before. As it is right now, we have this part grouped together, and our first part, which is length of list is greater than 10, just stands by itself. But even though we have parentheses around our second and third conditions, this is still going to be evaluated from left to right. And in this case, that would be really important because we have to check that our list has at least 10 items in it before we check the value of the 10th item. Otherwise, the program's probably going to crash because we'd be trying to access memory that isn't allocated to this list. So if the length of the list was only 8, then if this part was evaluated first, we'd try and access the 10th item, and then the program would crash because it would say, hey, you can't do this, this list doesn't have 10 items. So in this case, it would be very important that we put if the length of the list is greater than 10 on the left side of our logical AND operator, so that it gets evaluated before Java tries to evaluate the value of the 10th item, which may or may not exist. That's pretty much it for if, else logic, but there's one more thing I want to mention, and that's just the logical not operator. If we put an exclamation mark in front of our Boolean value, then this now means if not is hungry. So if is hungry is false, if the person is not hungry. We could also do something like if not tacos remaining is greater than 0, if we put tacos remaining is greater than 0 in brackets. Although at that point it's starting to get a little bit confusing, and we might as well just put if tacos remaining is less than or equal to 0, because that's just a little bit easier to read. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll put some links to some awesome Java resources in the description. Have an awesome day.